Good day and welcome to today's class. Today's class is a continuation of our previous class on further mathematics for SS2. At the last class, I gave you a rundown of the curriculum for SS2, where we divided it into scheme of work for the term. And I told you that I'm going to take them sequentially, beginning from the first topic under Team 1 down to the last topic. So today's class, we shall be looking at roots of quadratic equation, which happens to be the first topic in SS2 further mathematics. These are some of the objectives which we tend to achieve at the end of today's class. At the end of the whole course, as a topic that's root of quadratic equation, it is expected that students ought to achieve the following. 1, you should be able to find sum and product of roots of quadratic equation. 2, form quadratic equation of given sum and product of roots. 3, you are to state condition for quadratic equation to have equal roots, real roots, and no roots. 4, identify related conditions for given lines to intersect a given curve, be tangent to curve, and not intersect curve. 5, you should be able to solve various types of problems on roots of quadratic equations. So we shall take the first objective in today's class, which says we should find the sum and product of roots of quadratic equation. Before we go into that finding the sum and product of roots of quadratic equation, I would like us to have a recap on what we said concerning algebraic equations. We said algebraic equations or quadratic equations can either be binomial, that is 2 terms, or trinomial, which is 3 terms. At the last class in SS1 under quadratic equation, I did explain to you, I gave you so many examples on quadratic binomial. So in today's class, we shall look at quadratic trinomial, where that term, that expression has 3 terms. So a quadratic trinomial is a 3-term expression with the highest power of the unknown being 2. And examples of quadratic trinomial includes 2x squared minus 3x plus 5 is said to be a quadratic trinomial. Same with this, and this. They are quadratic trinomial because they have 3 terms. This is 1 term, this is another term, and this is plus 5 is the 3rd term. So this we refer to as quadratic trinomial. And same with this, plus half x squared is 1 term, plus 4x is another term, and the last term is minus 1. Same we have for C and D, C, D, and E. Now, the general quadratic trinomial is an expression of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are constant, such that a is not equal to 0. We said a cannot be equal to 0 because if a is equal to 0, it therefore means that it is a linear expression, because 0 times x squared becomes 0, leaving us with bx plus c, which makes it a linear expression. So therefore, this condition that a must not be equal to 0. Now, under quadratic trinomial, we shall look at how to factorize that expression. Now, this is leading us into finding the sum and product of roots of quadratic equation. So let's look at how to factorize quadratic trinomials. Example 1 says we should factorize 10x squared plus 17x plus 3. This is an example of quadratic trinomial, and the rule says that in factorizing quadratic trinomial, so long as the first term, the value of a, or the coefficient of x squared is not equal to 1, you look for 2 terms that when you multiply them together, gives you the product of the first term and the last term, and when you add them together, it gives you the middle term. In this case, the first term is 10x squared, while the last term is 3. So we shall look for two terms that when we multiply them together, it gives us the product of these two terms. And the product of 10x squared and 3 is said to be equal to positive 30x squared. So we shall look for two terms that when we multiply them together, gives us positive 30x squared, and when you add them together, it gives you positive 17x squared. So how do you get to find that? Get to find out all the multiples or factors, two factors that when you multiply them together, it gives you 30. We have 15x times 2x. We equally have 6x times 5x. We equally have 30x times 1x. And we have 3x times 10x. All these are factors of 30 that when you multiply them together, it gives you 30. But the second condition is that when you add them together, it gives you plus 17. So if you add this together, let's see, whichever meets those two conditions is said to be our two factors. So if you add this, because in this example, they are all positive. So plus 15x plus 2x gives you positive 17x. I bet you others won't give you. Plus 6x plus 5x is said to be plus 11x. And this is plus 31x, while this gives us plus 13x. So you discover that it is only this that meets the two conditions. So what are we going to do with those two factors when they have been gotten? The rule says you replace them with the middle term. Now this makes it from a quadratic trinomial to a four-term expression. This is to enable us factorize them in twos. So I'm going to replace them, substitute them with the middle term. This becomes 10x squared plus, instead of writing plus 17x, I'm going to add plus 15x plus 2x plus 3. Now, this has been able to change it from a three-term expression to a four-term expression without changing the sense of the expression. Because when you add 15x plus 2x, it still gives you 17x as in the question. But why do I have to express it as a four-term expression? So as to easily factorize them. So I'm going to look at the first two terms and the next two terms and look at what is common. And I'll factorize them out. So when you look at the first two terms, you discover that x is common as well as 5 is common. So therefore, we have it that 5x is common. So 5x into, if you factorize out 5x from 10x squared, you'll be left with 2x. And how did I get that? Divide 10x squared by 5x, it gives you plus 2x. Do same with 15x, this gives you plus 3. Close your bracket. What is common in plus 2x plus 3? 1 is common, so we have it plus 1 into bracket 2x plus 3. Now, for you to know that your factorization is correct, what you have in the two brackets must be equal. That is, in this case, we have 2x plus 3. So, this now, factorizing it further, because 2x plus 3 is still common, this gives us 2x plus 3. When you factorize it out, into bracket, when you factorize out 2x plus 3 from here, you are left with 5x plus, do same with this, you'll be left with plus 1. So we have been able to factorize it into this. So 10x plus 2 plus 7x plus 3 is said to be bracket 2x plus 3 into bracket 5x plus 1. So we shall take another example. Example 2 says we should factorize 2x squared minus 7x plus 3. This is to refresh your memory on quadratic trinomial. This will help us in finding the sum and product of roots of quadratic equation. So once you're able to factorize quadratic trinomial or expressions, it becomes simpler for you to find the roots and product of quadratic equations. So this will still follow the same rules, which says get two terms that when you multiply them together, it gives you the product of the first term and the last term. The first term being 2x squared and the last term being plus 3. When you multiply them together, 2x squared times 3 gives you 6x squared. So we shall look for two terms that when we multiply them together, it gives us positive 6x squared. And when you add them together, it should be able to give you minus 7x, which is the middle term. Now, how do we get those two factors? Look for any two numbers that when you multiply them together, it gives you plus 6x first. So I know that 2x times and 3x, when multiplied together, it gives me 6x. Also, 6x times 1x will also give me 6x squared. And I think that's just all. But the second rule is when you add them together, it must give you minus 7x. So if these are positive, when you add them together, they won't give you minus 7x. So let's see. What if both of them are negative? When you multiply them together, will it still meet the same condition? Yes. Because when you multiply two negative terms together, it gives you a positive term. So when you add them together, will it give you minus 7? This will give us minus 5x. But this tends to give us minus 7x. So this is said to be those two factors that can substitute minus 7x. So I'm going to substitute minus 7x for minus 6 and minus 1x. This becomes 2x squared minus 6x minus x plus 3. Minus x is same as minus 1x, so it does not change the sense of what we have. So we have been able to express it as a four-term expression to make it simpler for us to factorize. So we can then factorize them in twos. You may decide to write minus x before minus 6. Whichever way you place it, you see arrive at the same answer. So when you factorize out this, look at what is common in the first two terms. You discover that 2 is common and x, because 2 is a factor of 6. So 2x being common, into brackets, when you factorize out 2x from 2x squared, you'll be left with x. Factorize out 2x squared from minus 6, that is when you divide minus 6x by positive 2x squared, you'll be left with minus 3. Do same with this. What is common here? Minus 1 is common. Into, when you factorize out minus 1 from minus x, or divide minus x by minus 1, you'll be left with positive 1. So this becomes 1. Divide plus 3 by minus 1, you are left with minus, this is minus x. You'll be left with minus 3. So, having done that, I have been able to factorize it from a four-term expression to a two-term expression. So, this now can also be factorized out. That is x minus 3, because x minus 3 is common in both terms. So, we have it as bracket x minus 3 into, when you factorize out bracket x minus 3 from here, you'll be left with 2x. And when you do same here, you'll be left with minus 1. So, this is what you will get when you factorize 2x squared minus 7 plus 3. What this means is that it is these two linear equations that when you multiply together gives you this quadratic equation. For I told you that quadratic equation is said to be gotten from the product of two linear equations, and that is what we have just done. Kindly like my videos as you watch. While I recommend that you subscribe to my channel if you are yet to do so. Also turn on the notification bell so as to be notified whenever a new video is being uploaded. You can also use the comment section to interact with me on areas that are still difficult for you to understand. While I recommend you share the link with your friends and families so that they can also benefit from our daily classes. Let's take another example. Example 3 is asking us to factorize 3x squared plus 10x minus 8. So as usual, we shall multiply the first term and the last term together. So when you multiply the first term and the last term together, it gives us 24x squared. So the rule says you should look for two terms that when you multiply them together, it gives you the product of the first term and the last term, which I have multiplied to be 24x squared. And when you add these two terms together, it gives you the middle term, which is plus 10x. So how do I get those two terms? All I'm going to do is to find those two factors, or the two factors that when you multiply them together, it gives you 24x squared. So I have 8x. Okay, this is minus 24x squared because the first term is positive 3x squared and the last term is negative 8. So I have 8x minus 8x and plus 3x. It will give me minus 24x. I equally have minus 12x and plus 2x. When you multiply, it gives you minus 24. And this is minus 6x and plus 4x. It will also give you minus 24 when multiplied. And the last is minus 12 minus 24x and plus 1x. When you multiply this, it gives you minus 24. Now, the rule says when you add them together, it gives you the middle term, which is plus 10x. So when you add this together, this will give you minus 5x. This will give us minus 10x. This will give us minus 2x. And this will give us minus 23x. Now, if you look at it, none is meeting the second condition, which is plus 10x. But we can do something. Let's change all the positive to negatives and all the negatives to positive. So if this is positive, 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 and this is negative, definitely when you multiply them together, it still gives you minus 24x. But when you add them together, what will it give you? This becomes plus 5. This gives us plus 10. This becomes plus 2 and plus 23. So you discover that this meets that condition. So having gotten the two factors, we shall then replace it with the middle term. That is 3x squared plus 12x minus 2x minus 8. Now, replacing them with the middle term is because it does not change the sense of the expression. Because plus 12x minus 2x still gives us plus 10x. But why do we have to do that? It's because we want to factorize it. Because in this expression, nothing is common to factorize them out. So we have to express it as a fourth-term quadratic equation so that we can then factorize them in twos. So when you do this, looking at the first two terms, what is common? 3x is common. So we factorize out 3x. And when you factorize out 3x, this becomes into bracket. Divide 3x squared by 3x, you'll be left with x. Divide plus 12x by 3x, it will be left with plus 4. Okay? Now, why did I stop at this? Is because I only compared the first two terms. Okay? And 3x is what is common. So there's no need trying to factorize out 3x from the next two. Rather, we look at the next two equations and next two terms. What is common? Minus 2 is common because 2 is a factor of 8. So when you divide minus 2x by minus 2, you'll be left with x. And when you divide minus 8 by minus 2, you'll be left with plus 4. So having done this, you will agree with me that we have converted it from a four-term expression to a two-term expression. So we can then factorize it again to a one-term expression. And this is said to be what is common, if you look at the two-term expression, that is this and this, you will agree with me that x plus 4 is common, what we have in the bracket. So factorize it out again. When you factorize it out from here, what will be left? You'll be left with 3x, and do same with this, you'll be left with minus 2. So we have been able to get those two linear equations that when you multiply them together, it gives you the quadratic trinomial of 3x squared plus 10x minus 8. So I shall leave you with this to do as an assignment. So I'd like you to factorize the following quadratic trinomials using the steps I have taken, okay? What you have to do is to, first of all, look for two terms that when you multiply them together, it gives you the product of the first term and the last term. And when you add them together, it gives you the middle term. So what you need to do is to, first of all, multiply the first and the last term together. Look for all the two factors that when you multiply them together, it gives you minus 21x squared, which in most cases, you always end up having 4 sets of factors. And then you substitute it, replace it with the middle term. That gives you a 4-term expression. And then you can then factorize them in 2s. Factorizing them in 2s reduces it to a 2-term expression. Later on, when you factorize it again, it gives you a 1-term expression. And that is all you are asked to do. That gives you the required linear expression that when multiplied together gives you the quadratic trinomials. You do same with for 1 and 2. And that will help us into the first objective, which is to find the sum and product of quadratic equations. That brings us to the end of today's class. Kindly like my videos as you watch. While I recommend that you subscribe to my channel if you are yet to do so. Turn on the notification bell so as to be notified when a new video is being uploaded. You can also use the comment section to interact with me on areas that are still difficult for you to understand. While I recommend you share the link with your friends and families so that they can also benefit from our daily classes. Thank you, goodbye, and see you in our next class. Do have a nice day.